Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Scientific Governance and Risk Meeting number 129 for MakerDAO. Probably should mention that first. Taking place on February the 18th at 1700 UTC. My name is Long for Wisdom. I'm the governance facilitator for MakerDAO right now. As usual, we've got a bit of an agenda to get through in this meeting. We've got a collection of updates from the usual suspects, and then we've got a couple of other segments as well. So yeah, usual rules of this meeting apply. I'll just go over them. Feel free to interrupt and ask questions if you want to. We want to hear from you. If we run short on time or anything, like I'll move the meeting along. So please feel free to ask and generally get involved. Cool. All right, so we'll start with, I guess, the weekly governance updates from me. So we saw a couple of executive votes finally pass at the beginning of the week. Believe maybe I won't cover the old one, but yeah, so the week before last week's one passed. Onboarding a couple of new collateral types, UniV2 LP tokens, DAI USDC and ETH USDT. We also had, was that in that one? Yes, it was, I think. And then for the last week, we had a whole bunch more stuff happen. We had UniV2 Link ETH get onboarded. We had UniV2 Uni ETH get onboarded. We had DCIMs activated for Uni A, Aave A, Comp A, Link A, Wi-Fi A, and WBTC A. We had a collection of stability fee changes, courtesy of the rates group, mostly upwards, with some exceptions. The DAO, we also approved the interim DAO budget, which was funding funding a multi-sig made up of 5 of the mandated actors for 100,000 DAI. I believe approximately 50% of that has been spent now. And the other 50% remains for covering unexpected expenses. So let's see, I think that covers the executive changes. Polls this week just finished, not an hour ago, or just over an hour ago. So we saw the ETH max debt ceiling signal conclude with plus 1 billion, which would put us to 2.5 billion. This is the ETH max debt ceiling, so it'll be going into the DCIM parameter. We also saw DCIMs approved for LRCA, BAT A, oh sorry, yeah, BAL A, MAN A, ZRX A, KNC A, and REMBTC A. We saw the service buffer poll from 10 million to 30 million DAI pass. And we saw onboarding polls for UniV2 WBTC DAI and UniV2 Aave ETH. Both pass as well. Oh, and we increased the DSR from and we voted to increase the DSR from 0% to 0.01%, which is a groundbreaking change. So all of these things that I just mentioned will be in the executive on Friday, I believe, but I would defer to the smart contracts team in their update. So in terms of what the governance domain itself has actually been doing, mostly it's been kind of working on the budget and mandates feedback. So you'll note that we posted the subproposals for Gov Alpha, which would be the core units to cover governance. So I just recently submitted the next version of that based on the feedback. So thank you everyone for helping to shape those. It's much appreciated. All right. Otherwise, we've just been kind of doing the usual stuff, keeping governance going, you know, those sorts of things. So unless there's any questions, we'll move on to Peyton with governance at a glance.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
Just posted the link if you want to follow along in the forum there. Pretty exciting week, as Long mentioned, a lot of stuff happening internally. I know last week we were kind of anxiously waiting that 2 billion DAI issued mark, and now we're way past it. DAI supply sitting above 2.25 billion right now, which is really exciting. Kind of in line with that, the stability fee increase that went through, combined with the more DAI outstanding, has us sitting at nearly 80 million in annualized fees, which is super great. And not much movement on the DAI VWAP. We're still sitting at 1.001. I guess still good when it's no news, right? As far as announcements on the forum, there's a couple neat things I wanted to highlight this week. Aaron put together a really great tutorial for adjusting the debt ceilings with the instant access module. So I got that linked. You can go ahead and call one if you start to see a debt ceiling approach, and pretty exciting. Will cost you a little ETH, but always a good thing to do for the community. And then I believe we got a presenter on this later, but the MIPS portal is live now from DSpot. I won't talk about it too much, but I got the link there, and I think we'll be getting a presentation here later on this call for that. As far as active discussions in the forum go, we have the Eurodai discussion that Seb brought us. A lot of really exciting thoughts there about different paths we could go down to actually forming Eurodai. So if you got opinions one way or the other, be sure to leave them there. We also got a really cool post called Real World Assets, Things I Don't Like About Real World Assets. That's generating a lot of good discourse about the challenges with incorporating the asset class. So check that out. And we also had a very cool discussion about the Binance Smart Chain and kind of what we can do in wake of the high gas fees, if we should be considering checking out other chains or not. Signals, we do still have quite a bit for this week as well, so plenty of new governance actions coming in. The first one was kind of a combined signal between Aaron and Shupi, who posted for the DC, the ETH-A DC IAM gap to be raised. So basically that's raising the amount that can be raised or lowered for the ETH-A vault. Pretty exciting. Your thoughts there. Then we have two kind of similar polls. One is for the Uni LP tokens, the other is for the ETH-B vaults. And those polls are asking if we'd like to adjust the bag or the chop parameters. So those two parameters are basically the minimum auction bid increase, that's the bag, and the chop is the penalty fee the user faces for liquidation. So both of those kind of impacting separate vaults, so there are two separate signals to check out there. And last but not least, we had Planet X bring us a cool signal to switch the instant access module adjustments from a flat amount of the collateral to a percentage based. So that would help us as we scale. Obviously, you wouldn't have to be having all the polls for increasing the gap amounts, but obviously pluses and minuses to doing that. So go ahead and check out the discourse and leave your thoughts there. And that's all for me.
Great, thank you very much, Peyton. Yeah, I'll kind of echo that. There's a lot of stuff going on now, as always. So much appreciate any time everyone can spend on governance. All right, so with that, let's maybe move on to smart contracts. Chris.
Yeah. Hey everybody, it's Chris on the smart contracts domain team. So I'm just going to go through the sort of list of some of the things that we've done and call out anything that's interesting. Thank you, Long, for covering the spell executives earlier. So we didn't do any work in the collateral onboarding priority sheet this week. I think that's mostly because a lot of the priorities are known. And then for collateral assessments, we got done UniV2 AVE-F and UniV2 WBTC DAI. And so those are the two LP tokens that are also going to go in this Friday's executive. And we also have a UniV2 DAI USDT collateral assessment done. And last week I had mentioned that we had one, we're thinking about FC and WBTCB, just because for both of those collaterals, we never had an original assessment, so we can't point at it, but we decided we're not going to do that. They're already in the system. it's basically the same token. So I think everyone feels pretty good about that. So collateral to Kovan, we're still trying to get MIP21 to Kovan, working through the sort of iterative steps, but I'll talk about that in a bit. More updates to the DSS exec-lib and a lot of our tooling. So some of our tooling kind of blew up on us this week, and we had to put a bunch of work in on that. So for liquidations 2.0, which is MIP 45, we still have some small changes to the RFC, although those are happening outside of the RFC that everyone can see. And that's mostly so that auditors have a chance to sort of look at the existing RFC, and then we're going to take their feedback and change that. And I think we're coming close to a deadline on having that in for finality, because we want to lock it in before we do the formal submission. So that'll probably happen soon. There's a bunch of small enhancements for liquidations 2.0, mostly gas savings, just thinking about like normal operations and how we can save like as loads in us stores. And the audit work for liquidations 2.0 is coming along pretty well. So PwC, it looks like they might have an interim report for us on Friday, as well as Gauntlet, and I don't know about QuantStamp yet. So MIP 21, let's see, that's real world assets, the thing that we've been working on. So Sam found 2 critical bugs in the sort of draw and wipe function, and not exploits, just like it wouldn't have worked. And I wanted to sort of highlight this because this is quite literally the authors that wrote it, which are some of the original authors of the protocol itself, and like every other engineer that works on the protocol had already looked at this. Some of us have been explicitly burned by this in the past, and we all still missed it. And so Sam found it yesterday, and I just wanted to sort of highlight, I know these things seem like they take a while, but there's a reason why they take a while, because these little things can pop up. So we also have some more robust requires in the liquidator module for that, and a bunch of improvements to the tests, and we're probably going to get that spell in today or tomorrow. So centrifuge, which is MIP 22, so they're on hold, I think, until MIP 21 is finished, or at least until we get blocked on MIP 21. And then for security, there are some updates to the DEF CON spell that Naz worked on, and we're going to be shipping those, but they're blocked on, and this is another thing I wanted to bring up. So they're blocked on stablecoin circuit breakers, which I'm sure you guys remember, maybe the forum post I made a little while back. But we want to turn the circuit breakers off to sort of reduce governance attack surface on stablecoins. And the circuit breakers are still on for the Uni v2 DAI USDC and for the PSM. And so in this executive, we're going to have 2 sort of housekeeping items where we turn the circuit breakers off for both of those collateral types. And then that allows our DEF CON spells to be more, like we don't have to hard code all our stable coins. They can sort of detect it. And then, and so we'll deploy those after that change is live. Yep, and then some just sort of miscellaneous items. We deployed the flips and joins for Uni v2 AVF and WBTC DAI. And you'll be able to find any updates in the collateral updates channel. In fact, actually, I don't know if we made the updates this week for those, but Brian, if you get a chance, drop the addresses in there. And yeah, we've updated the deploy scripts for some of the old LP tokens. One thing that's happened is we allowed Kovan to diverge from mainnet, and so we're going to try and backfill Kovan with all of the LP tokens, which is not a sort of easy job. We're not really in control of those markets, or there may already be like markets there, and so the pricing won't be accurate. But it did lead to, there was a bug in the Oasis UI for DAI USDC, So some of you probably noticed that that uni LP token wasn't filling up, and it's something that probably would have been caught if we were able to stage it in Kovan and check it out, but the UI is just running on mainnet right now, and so yeah. Anyway, so we're hoping to see if we can come up with a solution that will catch that, but if anyone's planning on testing there, those tokens aren't going to be that useful because their pricing is going to be weird and whatnot, and also the ordering of the tokens may flip. I mean, there's lots of problems trying to deploy those there. So and let's see, I think that's about it. Let's see. Oh yeah, there's a PR and review that Sam had made for dealing with fee charging tokens like PaxG and USDT. So we'll get around to reviewing that at some point too. If there's anyone else on the smart contracts team that's got something that they wanted to say that I forgot, please speak up.
Yeah, a question did come up about our staffing. There's been a whole lot of ideas in the community for things that we can do, but there's just not the bandwidth to do them all safely. And with the transition between the foundation and what comes next, I think there's been some hesitation on the part of the foundation to hire more staff for our team. So that's been a little slow. We are interviewing now. These people will have to understand that there's going to be this transition and nobody really knows what comes next. So we're working on that. Even if we do hire up, it takes 6 months to get an engineer up to speed in a traditional engineering job. The Maker system is dense and intractable, and so we do need to allocate a little more time before we expect that any new devs are going to be running at full clip. So it's in progress. I don't know what our timeline is for kind of becoming a more independent entity, but the sooner that happens, the sooner I think we'll be able to be in a good place where we can hire and retain new engineers.
Great. Sorry, go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, Brian, so would you say that Shupi had on the forum mentioned that he had talked to a couple of his buddies who are devs? So actually that wouldn't help, right? Just to get talented people off the street to start working on something the community wants to push forward?
Yeah, I mean, we can use help with the collateral onboarding. We've kind of got this idea that we'd like to run devs through a pipeline where we can have them on, collateral onboarding and, weekly spells where they're manipulating parameters and kind of get them under our wing in that regard. And then, yeah, Chris, we'll turn them into full CryptoPunks, in an iterative process from there.
Yeah, got it. And I guess this is the reason why a lot of devs don't want to leave. Well, once you master Solidity, right, you don't want to go to work at freaking Solana with Rust or something, right?
Well, so I mean, the thing is, Solidity is the easy part. It's the mentality that this is actually like hardware. This is space code. So we don't want to. It's fun to add things to this, but it's also very dangerous if we don't do it right the first time. So just kind of we're all brainwashed to think that the MCD system is the best, and but it is very fragile, and so we need to keep that in mind when we're building on it.
Cool. Thanks, Brian.
Yep, thank you, Chris and Brian, for that update. And yeah, Frank for the questions. All right, let's move on to oracles then. Nick, do you want to give us some updates? Sorry, so I know you're planning on talking about the oracle sensitivity stuff, but we can maybe cover that a little bit later because we've got some other stuff to go through.
Yeah, of course. So, excuse me. So later today, we're going to be deploying the Aave ETH and Wrap BTC DAI LP oracles for the collateral onboarding tomorrow. Fingers crossed that gas prices are low because past couple of weeks, each of these Oracle deployments costs like $500 for each of them. Not fun. Also, Starkware oracles are going live tomorrow. So that's really exciting. Right, it's the first time our oracles are going to be used on L2. So big step for us, and this has been in the pipeline for quite some time. And super proud to partner with DYDX on that one. As for the team, teams come up with a much more advanced kind of testing and staging environment. That's going to essentially allow us to start testing releases, one, much more thoroughly, but more importantly, allow us to start testing a bunch of releases in parallel. So up until now, we've kind of had this problem where if we do this collateral onboarding cycle every week, our kind of staging environment has been kind of monopolized by collateral onboarding. And so we have all these other things that we want to test, but we don't quite feel can be tested in that 1 week type of cycle. So it's been hard to try to fidget, kind of squeeze those in there in between the gaps. So this is going to start letting us test just like unlimited things in parallel. So right now we have like 4 different builds in staging right now. So that's super cool. And it's just going to allow us to start releasing things much more rapidly. So props to the team for getting that spun up. It's probably long overdue, but given the clip at which we've been focused on collateral onboarding, this technical debt had definitely built up for a while now. So for example, one of the things that's in testing right now is what we're calling a patched scuttlebutt client. So what does that mean? Back during Thanksgiving, we had a Oracle outage for a few hours. And essentially what happened there was that the Scuttlebutt protocol which is a peer-to-peer protocol, right? It's basically is used to buy the Oracle feeds to kind of send price messages around. It has a hard-coded limit on how big the state size can be. So just think of if Ethereum had like a max state size limit, and all of a sudden, if you hit that limit, it just kind of falls over and it's just dead. So we had kind of investigated the code, and there was it was just like a hard-coded line somewhere that it can't get bigger than 4.6 gigabyte. And from our investigations, there's no reason why that limit was there, seemingly at least. So we've changed that value to a higher number, and then we kind of just spammed that staging network with a bunch of messages to see if we can get it over the previous limit, and if any of the behavior got wonky. So the initial tests for that look really promising. So we've easily broken over the previous limit, but still a lot of further testing to be done to ensure that it's actually stable. A lot of different kind of edge cases that we need to check out. But that's going to be really important, because right now at the clip with which we're adding new collateral, the Scuttlebutt state size fills up about every 6 to 8 weeks. So essentially we have to like wipe the state and go to a new Scuttlebutt network, do like a migration every 6 to 8 weeks, which is just really annoying and kind of a waste of everyone's time. So hopefully for the next migration, we can migrate to this patched version. And then we won't have to, do one of these migrations for at least a year. We could technically set the value even higher, so we wouldn't have to do it for, say, like 5 years or something. But I think it's better to be. I think it's better to be safe before you overflow some random variable in a dependency somewhere, right? You probably don't want to go out that far. On the new oracles front, we are looking at doing LP oracles for Curve and Balancer. We have a general idea for how to build those from a design point of view. It's just, but it's definitely still early in the R&D stage. Haven't really coded them up yet. But those look quite promising. The other thing we're looking at is for Uniswap v3. Can't really give much details about that one, but we're looking into that. I've also been working on the Oracle's core unit proposal. I wouldn't say it's coming out soon, but definitely over the next couple months. And lastly, we're looking at we're investigating how to reduce the Oracle gas expenditures, and I'll talk more about that later. Why we're doing that, and what solutions we've kind of found.
Perfect. Thank you, Nick. All right, we had fast. Cool. Let's have a risk. Primož, do you have any updates for us?
Yeah. So there's not a huge amount of updates from our side this week, because we're primarily dealing with developing methodology of how to define parameters for liquidations 2.0. So to require us to stress test some historical price crashes for different combinations of auction price curves and other parameters that are needed in liquidations 2.0. And I think there can be about 9 auction parameters applied to each vault type. So you can imagine how many combinations are there possible. And yeah, we're initially focusing on ETA. We'll propose a few price curves and combinations of other parameters, and try to explain what are the pros and cons of each set of parameters proposed. There's also regular ongoing work on UniLP collateral evaluations. Monet Supply is doing a really great job of publishing them regularly each week. So this week he's working on, and we should publish DAI USDT UniLP, and then next week we'll potentially cover Lubrink ETH UniLP and Wi-Fi ETH UniLP. Marco is also spending some time on Wrap Bitcoin liquidity, and particularly redemption risks, in order to have better understanding of Wrap Bitcoin liquidity in times of distress. And this is going to be important if we are to additionally increase the app ceiling, or if we are to onboard Wrap Bitcoin B with a lower liquidation ratio. And then we still owe parameters for ETH vault, so the high liquidation ratio vault. So in the upcoming days, I should make a post on the proposed parameters for ETH. Likely there'll be also a poll. And then finally, we also made one poll this week on potentially increasing back parameter and chop parameter for UniLPs. So this is the minimum bit increment and the penalty fee. Because we aren't seeing enough keeper participation there. So please have a look at this signal, and please vote if you haven't already. And that's about it for the week.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Awesome. So let's see. Reward finance. Seb, you wanna?
Yes, thanks. So first updates, we have produced some kind of documentation that I hope is a bit clear, because it's still a complex subject. But yeah, so there is documentation that explain all the new nomenclatures that we are using. So there is no longer a minimum underlying collateral ratio that no one understands the meaning. So it seems a bit more clear. We have also a dashboard, produced a dashboard, a fake one, just to give you an understanding on how we are tracking the SPVs and the performance of the assets after we have made an investment. I want also to thank the legal team for helping us, the future legal team, and mainly Marvin from the Clearos Fellowship, to help us to understand a bit better some key components of the legal contracts. So there is nothing specific to report here. I also want to thank the business development team for all the work they have done, because we have a lot of new people that are coming to us thanks to them. So we have a lot of work and a lot of partners to onboard for the future, and some are super interesting. I want also to highlight that we are still a bit delaying the whole process, and some of the partners obviously have some difficulties to keep track of everything, because we are dealing with real assets with real people. And when we make a commitment to them, obviously they are try to start to do things for this deadline. So sometimes it's always a bit difficult to have a good understanding. I think mainly of New Silver or Consult Freight, because they are doing business, and they have to turn some people down after promise because we are not able to deliver. So that's a bit sad. It's something we need to keep in mind for the future. It's always difficult to, yeah, exactly. There are some real world people. I never spoke to real world people before, but they exist. And last point, we made a risk assessment poll review that will present quickly.
Awesome. Do you need to be able to share your screen?
So I can just actually post the quick read here. Just 1 second.
Sure.
So yeah, basically, just like in a nutshell, we had a little poll that we put it like about a month ago, which was actually midway through some of like our onboarding assessments, and we basically wanted to get a little bit from the community feedback on the different sections of the sessions, because these assessments are a little bit lengthier than other assessments, and mostly because we kind of like we're analyzing, like the structures of the deals and the different types of risks, but also actually taking into account like industry benchmarks and things like that. So actually we went out to the community and asked the community a little bit of feedback on whether there are actually parts of the assessment that community we like to see a little bit more effort or greater focus or greater conciseness on, and then actually just let us know, so that also we could actually provide the value for the people that actually at the end of the day are actually voting on them. So it's kind of like part of like our iterative process with the community, and we've got a few responses on it, and actually it was, I guess, globally positive. We've identified ourselves in the team as well, like a few points where we can make some improvements, and I think one of the biggest takeaways, if I can say, is that the community definitely wants a little bit more focus on some levels of like summary of what we provide for it, like an executive summary. They actually really kind of points out what are the clear risks of each individual deals that we get through the door, and how we can kind of like provide just like TLDR kind of version of everything that we do, so that actually has the core points in there. And I think we're going to make actually a greater effort on that, and then kind of like test the ground as well with the community. Maybe actually kind of like publish that executive summary to a link, for example, to a more detailed version of the assessment, so that actually people can actually know enough actually to make their decisions in their minds. But if they actually really want to drill down into the detail of the assessments, they also can do that. So that's probably the very next point, following on from here. And feel free to make any further comments in the chat there, and we'll take that into account. And thank you guys actually on board with you. We're conscious that it's not always easy to the community, given that sometimes there's sensitive aspects, contracts and things like this behind those deals. And we really kind of we have to go back to the asset originators and the people that we work with to ask for consent on the things that we can publish and we cannot publish. So just be along the journey with us.
Great, thank you all. Yeah, definitely looking forward to those executive summaries. I'm not all together with the whole risk and reward financing, so looking forward to seeing those and learning more.
Cool. Yeah, will do.
All right, so I think we're going to take a short detour from the agenda now to briefly go to a guest that we have. So some of you may have noticed that we have seen a request on the forum regarding whether MakerDAO supports EIP 1559. So this went up just before the call. But we have Trent here from Ethereum, who is, I say Ethereum because I don't really know who employs them and things. I'm sure he can tell us. But yeah, Trent's going to tell us a little bit about that signal. Trent.
Sure, yeah. I'll just give a quick intro. Thanks for letting me jump in quick. I have to leave in a few minutes, so sorry to interrupt the flow. But thank you for the invitation and for those that helped me put the signal request together. Most of you probably recognize me from ETH Global, if you do it all, but I'm currently working on a small project with the core devs and Tim Byko specifically, who's the incoming lead on hard fork coordination and client implementations. So I'm working with him to get feedback from, a pretty as wide array as possible of Ethereum applications, and that includes you wonderful people as the MakerDAO community. So just before this call started, I published the request for signal, and there's already been some good discussion and feedback. So just wanted to voice it on the call that myself or Tim, you can find us anywhere on Twitter or Discord. I'll try to maybe hang out in the Rocket Chat a bit, but we can be reached if you have any questions or concerns. And then obviously we'll be watching that thread. I think that's all I have, but yeah, we're very interested in what the MakerDAO community has to say, and we'll be basically collecting feedback and the thoughts from the resulting discussion. And then there's a larger panel discussion on the 26th that we'll be presenting the results at. So thanks for the time. That's all I have, unless there's anybody who has a quick question or something that they want to point out. All right, I'll see you on the discussion thread.
Perfect. Thank you, Chad. That was awesome. Okay, with that short detour done, let's go back to our updates. So I think we have operational support next. Juan, is it, or Amy this week?
I'll do it this week.
Awesome.
I'll post the link so people can follow the same way that Peyton did. But yes, we have had quite a week. So for Know Your MIP, last week we did term lending module MIP 43 with Alan and Lev. That's quite interesting. The video is already on YouTube if you want to check it out. And this Friday, Pros will be holding the DSS Govs incentives. So join us this Friday. It's going to be quite interesting. Regarding collateral onboarding, we have had Fortunafy yesterday for real world assets with the team from Centrifuge. Also quite interesting. The recording is also on YouTube. And next week, we're going to have a call with the Synthetics at actually a little bit later. So instead of having it at 6 UTC, 6 p.m. UTC. We'll have it at 9 p.m. UTC. That's because Kane from Synthetics, it's in Sydney, I believe. So that's one of the points. Next, yeah, core unit updates. We have created. Well, I can't show my screen, or I could, but if you go to coreunits.makerdao.network, we have created a core unit corner, and there we can see all the sub-proposals that are being drafted with links and clarifications from the different community members. And yeah, we put all anything that's related, any videos, any links, a small FAQ, some other resources. So if you guys want to check anything or you have any questions, maybe that's a good place to start and to keep things organized. And yeah, David, we will host Opolis in, I believe it's next Tuesday community call. So be there. It's Tuesday at 5 p.m. UTC. And just a tiny reminder that it's one of the last days to give feedback for the core units that are in request for comments phase that are going to go into this next coming monthly cycle. So please join us in the forums. And there are new core units in the draft. You can also see all of them in the core unit corner, but integrations and WMAKR are the two last that joined the long list. So it's good to see everyone proposing value for the DAO. I think that's it. I don't know if there are any questions.
Yeah, I had a quick question. Were there any changes actually made during this RFC period to any of the core unit MIPS? I'm curious if there's like a summary for those changes anywhere.
There is not a summary. If you think that's useful, we could pull it, but that's probably already in GitHub, no?
Even just like a heuristic like coverage of like what was changed, like your experience during this RFC period would be super interesting to me.
Sure, I think that the heuristic is probably longer to compile and analyze than what you make it sound, but we can definitely try working something out if you think that's useful.
Oh yeah, no worries. I mean, I was just looking for like just a quick like brief update. Don't go through more trouble than it's worth. Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Any other comment or question? All right, so I think that's it from us.
Great, thank you, Juan. All right, so that brings us to MIPS. David, are you doing MIPS this week?
Yes, I am. Can I get the share permission, please?
Yep.
All right, here we go. All right, cool. So welcome to the weekly MIPS update, everybody. My name is David Utrobin. I am a community development lead at the Maker Foundation and also a proposed MIP editor. And so yeah, let's get into it. We are currently in week 3 of the February governance cycle. As many of you know, there were no formal submissions this month. So there were no MIP votes this month besides the greenlight polls that actually began on Monday. So let's get into it. So this week's updates are basically none. The focus of this month should be to comment and help improve proposals in RFC because there, like I said just now, there are no formal submissions. I did try to group these proposals in RFC to make it a little bit more I don't know, like visual and digestible for everybody to find the MIPS that they're interested in. But here are the standalone technical MIPS, and there's quite a few. And then there's, standalone miscellaneous, which is just the parameter proposal groups. There are a ton of payment related MIPS in RFC. definitely check those out. I'm not going to read through all of them here on this call, but feel free to look at Charles's MIP update that he actually just posted before this call. It lists and links to all of these proposals in RFC. These are the proposals in RFC related to core units. Here are the core unit related subproposals, which include 3 different core unit teams that are proposing themselves, which is the real world asset team, the risk core unit, and the governance core unit. And then, yeah, all the other subproposals are basically their associated budgets, the associated facilitator onboarding, and just the actual mandate for the team itself. There are a handful of PSM related MIPs and RFC that have not gotten too much feedback. They are all like iterations of different features that incorporate farming and mainly deal with compounds. So check those out. Yeah. And then lastly, here are the standalone subproposals. One of them is for onboarding myself as a MIP editor. The other one is for onboarding a new collateral type backed by B protocol. It's a declaration of intent. And then the last one are some MIP4 amendments that make it so that any new MIPs under 3 months old or 3 months since acceptance, they could be amended using the weekly governance cycle rather than the monthly governance cycle. This is just to give newer MIPs greater flexibility to fix things after they're accepted if they need to be fixed. And also it also creates a rule where you can submit multiple amendments as one subproposal, so you don't have to create like 5 or 6 individual subproposals for amendments if all of those changes are part of like the same thing. Yeah, that was poorly worded on my part, but hopefully that came across. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, as usual, there's a handful of pre-MIP discussions. Actually, they haven't been super like active for the last week. A lot of the RFC stuff is way more active, but yeah, definitely check out the pre-MIP discussions as well. And with that, happy February. Just a short update from us. And feel free to ask any questions. Yeah.
Thank you, David. Yeah, as David said, any questions, feel free. But I think maybe the MIPS update kind of segues us nicely into our next segment from Adrian. I'll give you permissions, Adrian, you can share your screen.
No. Okay.
Cool. All right, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. And basically, well, my company worked in the creation of the MIPs portal. As many of us probably know, we have all the MIPs right now on. Sorry. On GitHub, but many of them, I mean, when we are going in general to make any search of information there, if we want to make any filtering, it's quite difficult. I mean, it's not the best tool, right? GitHub or Git in general to find things within it. So one consulted us for building this this platform or this portal to show all the MIPs. I presented it recently on the forum, and here it is. So right now, I mean, there is still a work in progress here, but this is kind of the first iteration and is completely functional in what it has. We are right now listing all the main MIPs, right, with their status and relevant links to the MIP on GitHub. They can be filtered in general. You have an option to filter by title at the moment, and there is a general search, which would permit to search for any MIP that you want to find. Right now, the search is quite of general. It's looking just in all the text and content of the MIPs, but we are refining some elements on the search at the moment. So it could search, it could change a little the behavior in the future. The portal also have filtering, so you can filter by some status. If it is somebody is looking only for some specific status, it has so you could filter for more than one, let's say, and that will appear. You could then, of course, navigate to the details of a given MIP, where we have well, a general index for navigating through it. And, we have the information. All the information is being pulled directly from GitHub. So, of course, this is similar to what we'll see on GitHub, but well, it permits to have everything here. The information is also analyzed, and as you see here on the right, we are extracting information directly from the MIP. There is more work being done here, so we expect in the future to extract much more information, but that also comes, I mean, now because we have this portal, it will be possible also to add much more information in general, let's say to the preamble section, and to, so that the software will detect that information and will be accessible from here. One of those will be, and we don't have it now, but one of those will be, of course, to link all these MIPs to the forum where the discussion are being held. We are also, well, right now we see here they are going to be, well, they're being linked with their, what is the pull request. So that is kind of, so you could know that, well, right now here are being shown all the pull requests just for expectations. So these are all the pull requests in the site, but there is work being done to link this pull request specifically to this MIP, so that each MIP is going to show here only pull requests regarding to it. Okay, what else we have here? There is well, there is work being done right now regarding so the sub proposals. So as you see, we are right now listing only the proposals. There is ongoing design, so we try to follow the best that we could all the guidelines in the design and creation of components. And we are working right now in some proposal design proposal for displaying the sub proposals here. So that's coming soon, but it's not they are not available right now. I just forget, you could see here also if you click over them. So you have the each MIP has a sentence and a sentence summary and a paragraph summary, so it can be seen here as well. So on the I added the repository, so if anybody wants to go there or contribute to the development, so that would be great. Here in the repository, we detail the architecture that right now is being, so the architecture of the system in general. At the moment, we are just indexing all this information on the backend, and we have a webhook also that whenever any change happens on this repository, is going to call the backend, and the backend is going to update the indexes. So that's that reflects directly here, and that's it for the moment. So not sure.
Adrian, can you maybe show the feedback button if anyone has any feedback about this? Well, you guys can reach directly on the forums or Rocket Chat, but in the bottom right of the website we put a hidden apparently button for feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, so here it is. And of course, please feel free to make recommendations, requests. We are happy to hear from the community in general to improve further the portal.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much, Adrian. Yeah, we're kind of looking forward to seeing or to having more development done on that in the coming months. The hope is to get this, to make it so there's one sort of a great place to view all the MIPs. There's like a whole bunch of stuff we have planned, like linking them with like tags, so you can find all related MIPs quite easily, and all sorts of things. So yeah, hopefully that'll be useful and make MIPs like slightly less impenetrable for some. Awesome. All right. So I think that brings us to our next segment, unless there's any questions for Adrian. Awesome. Okay, Nick, do you want to run us through your thoughts?
Sure.
Changes.
So it's no surprise, right, that gas prices have been really high, right? You know, you've probably seen people complaining, right, that the gas prices are high. But it doesn't just affect users; it affects us as a protocol as well. So one key example here is oracles. In order to update an oracle, we are spending an obscene amount of money every day on gas. It is like in the $20,000 plus a day range, and I'll let you guys do your own mental math. You know what that comes out to in a year. It's a lot. So we're kind of and this is kind of after we've already done our kind of tech optimization in terms of cutting it down, to use 10x less gas than the previous version of oracles. So something has got to give here. So we've looked at like a variety of different things. Is there some kind of optimization you can do with, say, zero knowledge proofs? Like we've kind of looked across the board, but the fact of the matter is there's no good solution. There's only kind of solutions that come with trade-offs. So one of those trade-offs is just that you update the oracle less. And so I've been talking with Primoz a little bit about this from the risk side, right? Because if you update the oracle less often, then right, there's a risk from a there's more collateral risk, right? From a liquidations point of view, collateral might not get liquidated as quickly, right? That's more risk for the protocol. And Juan has also he did an amazing job, by the way. Everyone give it up for Juan. He kind of compiled some data showing different the frequency of oracle updates at different oracle sensitivities. So what do I mean about sensitivity? So right now, for major assets like ETH and wrap BTC, we update them on a 0.5% kind of sensitivity. That means that every time the price that you see in the market differs from the price that the oracle is reporting by 0.5%, you update the oracle. And then for non-major assets, so not ETH and not wrap BTC, we update about every 1%. So Long, can you let me share my screen for a second?
Yep. There you go.
Cool. All right. Share screen. There we go. And need to go in my security preferences real quick. Sorry.
No worries.
Zoom will not be able to record the contents of your screen until it is quit. Okay, never mind then. I'll just kind of narrate what this graph is.
You want me to share it, Nick? Nick, Long, can I share?
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
There you go.
You guys see it?
Yep.
Perfect. Oh, now we can't see it. What happened? We could see it for a little while. There we go. Okay, so what are we looking at here? What Juan has done is he's basically mapped out if we were to select a different sensitivity, what is the frequency of Oracle updates that we would do? It's mapped out by asset. And the important thing here is that you don't compare between the different assets because these collateral types were onboarded at different times. So there may be like a discrepancy between them. So you can't really do relevancy between, say, comp token or Wi-Fi token. But what you can do is just for each asset itself, for like, within its own little vertical, how does the number of updates you need to do change depending on how much you raise the sensitivity? So you can look at ETH, for example, right? ETH did about 2,700 updates. If we were to raise that to say 3% sensitivity, right, then we would get that down to 608, updates. So that's kind of the order of magnitude change that we can expect in terms of the number of transactions we have to do. And that's directly proportional to the decrease in cost, right, that we would have. So right now, I said we're spending somewhere around like $20,000 a day. If we did something like this, we could get that down to like, I don't know, 4 or 5. And that would be a huge improvement.
One quick question. Are you doing updates that are only based on percentage change, or are you also doing it with a frequency, like once an hour?
We are also, so we kind of do both. So the trigger for the medianizer is either a time-based update or the sensitivity update. I believe the time, I need to check this out, but I believe the time is a little over 4 hours. But we almost never hit that. It's almost always the sensitivity piece that gets hit first. So that's on the medianizer front. For the Oracle security module, that gets updated at the top of every hour. That one's kind of a fixed amount, right? So no matter what, you're doing 24 transactions a day on the Oracle security module, and then you have to add, the number of transactions that you're doing on the medianizer, and that's for each asset.
The reason I asked that is it follows in the trend the discussion we had last week, where specifically only for the comment about risk, that if the pricing is going up, it's not really a risk question. It's only when the price goes down that it exposes the protocol to risk.
Yep, very, very astute observation. So I've discussed this kind of with the mandated actors, and in particular with Primož. And I don't know if Primož wants to jump in, but essentially the gist is that for assets that have larger liquidation ratios, like above 150%, we would feel comfortable raising the sensitivity of those significantly to either 3% or maybe even 4%. Looking at the ones we have here, that would be KNC, ZRX, Mana, LRC, BAL, BAT. and Aave. And then the ones that are starred, so Wi-Fi, Uni, and Link should be on here as well. Yeah, actually ignore the ones that are starred. Just Wi-Fi, Uni, and Link. We are still a little bit unsure about. So essentially we have more DAI that's minted against those assets. So the system has more exposure to them. So there's essentially more risk. But I still think that the cost savings are likely worth it. But I'm gonna leave the decision on those three up to Primoz and the rest of the risk team.
Yes. Nick, oh, sorry, Primoz, go on.
Oh, I'll be quick. I'll just give my 5 cents. The way I see this, how this would affect vaults, is that they would potentially be liquidated a bit later, right? If you have a slower moving market price, because the sensitivity is now lower, which means that then on average, they would be liquidated at a bit lower collateralization ratio, which in theory increases auction slippage. But as Nick said, we're really talking about small percentage figure compared to the liquidation ratio we're using for these vaults. So I don't see a huge difference in changing risk profile by implementing this, at least from market perspective. And some could even argue that this could be even positive for vault users, for those who would want to unwind, because they would actually have more time to unwind. Again, if you have a slowly decreasing price. So yeah, there may be some other implications of this probably, such as integration risks and so on, but I'll let others who work on integrations explain if there are some downsides, but in regards to market risk, it's not really a huge problem, in my opinion.
Nick and Primoz, can I make a suggestion to you guys on this one? So the maybe don't base it only, I think, on the liquidation ratio side of things, but for those, the fact that actually some of those assets have also liquidation ratio is in part due to their volatility. So maybe actually kind of like weight the liquidation ratio to increase the sensitivity with like with some volatility, the denominator, standard deviation or whatever, just to make sure that that you're still kind of weighting appropriately to the level of downside risk. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Yeah, liquidation ratios are a function of volatility.
But by weighting by weighting that, you kind of, by doing like a denominator of that, there you kind of, you just take that into account of the actual recent. Maybe you could even like take the very recent actually standard deviation for that.
No, I totally agree. I just think the percentages we're talking about compared to 175 are kind of small. So yeah, it just seems to me it's not a huge change in market risk profile, because then you have the auctions part, which is something random in its own. So yeah, I personally don't see a huge problem.
So the point I wanted to make is that a lot of this focus has been on obviously the cost, and then what additional risk does that create for a maker. But we had brought up, and we were discussing this in the mandated actors group, that we also have customers of our oracles, and so this affects them as well. So Nick, I don't know if were you planning on doing this across the board for everything, or are we thinking of just limiting this to price feeds where we're the only consumer?
Yeah, so for right now, it's going to be limited to ones where we're the only consumer. Fortunately, that's the majority of them. So the way that the distribution of how, in terms of demand for our oracles from customers, it's almost always ETH and wrap BTC, right? And those are the ones that we're not changing. Those are the ones that we have on an even higher sensitivity. They're on 0.5%, right? So those are actually the most expensive ones to run. But I think it's totally worth it, right? Especially since, the amount that the Maker protocol has in exposure to those is huge, right? So you definitely want to make sure your Oracle for those is as accurate as possible. The other thing that we see people really frequently want is the Oracle security module, but they're not using it because it's a gauge of a fair market price, right? They're using it just because they want to do some kind of vault management, right? So the only thing they care about, like, is Maker going to liquidate, on the next price update in an hour or not, right? It doesn't really matter if we change the sensitivity of the medianizer when, from the OSM point of view, the customer just cares about liquidation coming, yes or no, right? But yeah, in the future, that definitely is something that that we're going to have to look at. We could essentially say, look, like, if you want to use an Oracle, our default is 3 or 4% sensitivity. If you want a more sensitive one, great, you can pay for the gas, right? That's how we're going to charge you, right? So you may think you want a 1% Oracle, but then when we say, okay, please pay us $200,000 a year, I think a lot of people are going to change their tune very quickly. And I just want to bring up that this problem is not exclusive to us. Chainlink has this problem, except like much worse, because they're not. I said earlier, we've already optimized, our oracles relative to oracles v1, right? Where instead of every feed, right, we have 21 feeds instead of every feed pushing their price update. We have this off-chain kind of consensus mechanism, and then just like one price update gets pushed. Chainlink has like copied that from us, but they haven't launched it yet. And so they're like bleeding out to the tune of like, I don't know, like I think I did like some napkin math the other day, and they're spending like hundreds of millions of dollars a year in gas on oracles. Like, they've definitely made no money at all off of these things ever. It's not just an us problem, it's like an ecosystem wide problem. But the long and short of it is that, Long, cut me off if I'm taking too much time, but so I'm gonna kind of ramble a bit here. But the long and short of it is that DeFi needs oracles. You cannot run DeFi without oracles, and so there's two paths from here. It's either that people pay up, right, because they realize that running these oracles is super expensive, and that it's a service that they need to invest a significant amount of money into, and it's just a cost of doing business. They may not like it, but that's how it is. The other way, and I hope it doesn't go this way, but I could see it, is that people just stop caring about the decentralization of oracles. That if a decentralized oracle is going to cost $100,000, $200,000 a year, why would I pay that when I can just run my own little bot, and it's just like an EOA address sending a price update, and that's it, right? Which would be cheaper than that in gas, right? And you control it yourself, but it's not decentralized, right? And so whether I think our industry right now, is kind of full of people who are very ideologically driven. Like I know I'm very ideologically driven, and I believe in decentralized finance because of the decentralized piece. But when we get an influx of new users, right? When we grow, say 10x as an industry, are those values going to be passed down to those users, or is DeFi just the newest casino where you can play at and it's really cool, but the idea of valuing decentralization is really lost, where decentralization is more of a meme or just like some word that has no meaning, rather than an actual, principle by which to design and use systems with. And that sounds a little bit somber, but that's kind of where we're at. I mean, if you look at Binance Smart Chain, it's an EVM with a bunch of validators that are all run by Binance, and the growth so it's not decentralized at all, but the growth has been insane, right? And what do you make of that? Well, you can, on the one hand, you can say, oh, well, Binance is a really big exchange and they have a lot of users and it's really easy for them to funnel, their users onto their blockchain. But the other thing you can say is that there's a lot of people who use Binance Smart Chain that just don't care that much about decentralization. And, that's, to each his own. But I think from a business point of view, right, that's something we need to take a look at. Like, are oracles just a necessary expense for the Maker protocol, or is this a business that we want to get into because we know there is a need in the industry and we can serve that need? Okay,
Nick,
thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah, that's a good one. Hey, does ETH 2.0 change anything at all?
Yes and no. So yes, ETH 2.0 will bring, at least from proof of stake, right? You get somewhere around like a 3x improvement in scale, right? And then you have sharding, right? And presumably, people would be running on different shards. That being said, it's not this rosy picture that everyone makes it out to be, because if you want to have composability, you need to basically be on the same shard. So that means that if Maker is on a shard, where does everyone else want to be? Like, does Uniswap want to be on the same shard as Maker? Probably. Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe, Maker really wants to be on the same shard as Uniswap, right? So you still have this effect of kind of like, like everyone wants to live in Manhattan. So the costs to do a transaction on the, quote unquote, DeFi shard are still going to be, expensive, right? That's just how it's going to be. It's kind of just going to be like prime real estate, right? That being said, right, other things that generate a lot of activity right now, they don't have to be on that shard. So, we will see some reduction, but it's unclear to what degree and what the costs of that are going to look like. The only thing I can say is that I am very sure that the big DeFi protocols, in a world where ETH2 is launched and we've scaled at the same growth rate that we have now through then, is that the big DeFi protocols are just going to be printing money. And so even if oracles are an expensive cost center, they can afford it. That I'm 100% sure of.
So there are a couple of other questions in the sidebar. Maybe we can get to. Tim, do you want to go? Or Aaron?
So it does look like there was a question about, I'm just going through these in order. Someone asked about the UniLP Oracle audit. It's currently underway. We've got some initial feedback from ABDK, but it's still going on. The way this usually works is that they give you an initial report, then we get a chance to go and review the report, fix any issues, or argue that something they cited isn't really an issue. and then they go back and kind of make a final report, and they'll then publish that final report. So we're still probably a good week out or so from getting the initial report. Okay, and okay, so from Tim, do we have any idea how much our customers are willing to pay for the oracles? So right now it's all free. And to be honest, I think we have to make it free. It's the only way to gain market share. And really, it doesn't cost us that much more. Like, we have to make these oracles anyway for the Maker protocol. So expanding their usage to customers is like it doesn't really cost us anything more. So it just makes sense, especially if you look at in the big picture how important oracles are going to be. I mean, they're already important right now, but how important they're going to be in the future. I mean, this is going to be like a multi-billion-dollar industry. I mean, you can look at the Chainlink market cap and be like, well, that's a ridiculous number right now. And, you know, for the size of the business right now and for the, you know, profitability of the business, yeah, that's a ridiculous number. But if DeFi scales the way that I believe it will, oracles are going to be a huge business, and we want a piece of that pie. And so this is not the time to be trying to be cost neutral on oracles. I think this is like where, you know, we're fortunate to be in the position where the Maker protocol is making a bunch of money, and we should be investing that money, right? And I think this is a really good bet.
And Nick, with regards to flash loans, if you do lower it to 3% or 4%, say on Aave, would that actually entice people if they realize that it's down the sensitivity to 3-4% to do a flash loan?
Not quite sure what you mean, right? The collateralization ratio is significantly higher, right, than this 3 or 4% sensitivity change, right? So if in the worst case the oracle's off by 4%, you know, if the collateralization ratio is 175%, there's no way to just, you know, do a flash loan and run away with money, right? Because you still have to be significantly over collateralized. Unless I misunderstood your question, so feel free to.
No, that was it. That was it. That was it. Yeah.
All right, maybe approaching the end of the meeting. If there's any like last questions or comments people want to make before we wrap up, maybe go ahead.
Yeah, so just I see Aaron had another question about, you know, we're coming up on a year free for expiration for some of the Oracle customers. What is the payment structure going to look like? I think that's kind of all still up for debate. My personal opinion is that right now is not the time to worry about charging people. Right now is the time to just get market share. Just get as much market share as you can. This pie is going to keep growing, and you want to secure your position of the pie.
Yeah, but maybe then we shouldn't worry too much about the money we have to spend on the oracles, right?
Yep. Yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? If there's no customers that are using it, let's cut costs. As soon as we do have, let's say a customer really wants like a sensitive uni oracle, right? Then we can take a look at, okay, do we want to take the loss on that one, or do we want to work out some kind of deal where they pay us something? It's not nearly enough to cover the real cost, right? But it subsidizes the real cost. Those kind of things I think are still up for debate, and if anyone in the community feels strongly about that, I would would totally work on a proposal with them.
And team, going to the other side of the spectrum, you could have the Oracle update every 0.1% move, and you will have a transaction every block, and that will be extremely expensive. But that's not a reason, or the trade-off wouldn't be worth it. So it's not about saving money. It's just about making it more optimal to the situation that we're handling right now.
Exactly. It's
so not wasting money, right?
It's dynamic.
Yeah, thanks. That makes total sense.
Is it true that if there are enough customers for a given Oracle, everybody's like overall cost goes down and we could charge less for Oracles?
Yeah, that's true. But to do that, we need market share. We need a critical mass of users where, and we don't have that yet. And that's going to be my goal for my core unit, is basically to take the Oracles as a business component much more seriously than we have been. I think up until now it's kind of been like a little side thing, and it's just been about keeping up with collateral onboarding, and I think that's a mistake. I think you need to scale this up. We have a real opportunity here, and technologically wise, our Oracles are just as good as Chainlinks, if not right now. From a gas point of view, they're like 10x better. We need to leverage that, right? We really need to productize the Oracles. We need to put a brand around it. We need to market it. We need to do business development. It can't just be engineering.
Are you talking about expanding the scope, some element of MakerDAO, to include pricing not only crypto assets but others using those Oracles?
Yeah, and I think that we are uniquely positioned in that, right? Like if you like,
I think it's great. I think it's spectacular. Don't get me wrong. I think it's wonderful to go after that market.
Likewise.
So for example, think of it this way: there's I believe in a future where there's a lot of security tokens that want to use, or I guess we don't call them security tokens, we call them real world assets, that would like to use Maker as a credit facility. If we say that, okay, well, if you want to be onboarded in Maker, well, you're going to need Maker Oracles, right, to price your thing, right? So that's basically, it's like a moat type of business, right? Where if the protocol just says, yeah, well, we don't take Chainlink Oracles, we only accept if you use a Maker Oracle, it basically drives business to us based off the fact that, people want to use us as a credit mechanism, right? So there's a lot of ways where we can basically get customers that, Chainlink can't poach those from us because it's intrinsic to using Maker in the first place. So I think there's a lot of ways to carve out a significant chunk of the market. And so that synergy with the Maker protocol, I think, is a huge advantage to an Oracle business compared to an independent Oracle business, like say like a banned protocol or something that doesn't have that association. It doesn't have that synergy. It doesn't get that benefit. So anyways, I don't want to take up too much longer on the call. So I'll have my core unit proposal out. I'm not going to say soon, but in the next couple months, and it'll be very thorough.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you, Nick. Yeah, I think that was kind of an awesome explanation of the value Oracles can bring. All right, I think we're getting a little late, so let's maybe wrap up. I will leave the call open again after the recording, if you want to keep discussing. Yeah, thank you everyone for coming. I'll talk to you again soon.